Hey, I'm Bruce Weinstein,
And I'm Mark Scarborough.
and we are the authors of their new book, Cold Canning. And I want to thank Melissa's Produce for letting us do this wonderful demo and talk to you about the wonders of cold canning.
It's amazing. So we've just published this book about cold canning, and one of the things I can tell you about the book is that this is small batch canning. This is not canning to survive the apocalypse. It's not canning so that you live until time has no more meaning. This is small batch canning, and
The nicest part of it is no hot water processing. You don't have to boil your bottles. You don't have to sterilize them. You don't have to drop them in hot water baths or steamers or pressure canners. And these will still last 6 months to a year, if not longer, in your fridge and your freezer.
right. And also, when we get to this and get rolling with this, you'll see we don't need a second cook, right? We don't need to cook a second time. By that, I mean where you make a jam and then you put it in the bottles and then you pressure or can steam it.
That second cook set,
That's a
right?
double cooked set, and you lose some of the fresh flavor. So we're going to retain as much of the fresh flavor as possible by skipping that second cook in a canner or steamer. And let me say, before we get going on this first recipe, let me say that one of the things that was really exciting about writing this book is, of course, we thought about jams and preserves and jellies, and then chutneys, and then we started to kind of blow it out to pickles and relishes.
And infused oils and infused vinegars. And we said, well, how far can we go with this? Let's make mustards and ketchups and barbecue sauces. And then we went into the hot stuff for the salsa matchas and the chili crisps and the salsas and the chili paste.
And then we went to liqueurs, and there's this recipe in the book for a homemade triple sec that is crazy. But the theory was, listen, if you put it in a jar and store it in the fridge for a while, you can make all kinds of things, and that's how the book grew to 425 recipes. You can make tons of stuff: chili crisps, salsa matchas, as you said, all kinds of salsa pastes,
dessert sauces, hot fudge. If you could put it on ice cream, we've got it in this book: marshmallow sauce, wet nuts, hot fudge, strawberry sauce, pineapple sauce,
infused oils, infused vinegars. I mean, really, honestly, it's all of it. But we're going to focus on fresh produce thanks to Melissa's today. So we're going to start with a recipe for a tomato conserve.
So I'm going to chop up this lovely beefsteak tomato. I got one done. There's another one. And Mark will tell you what conserve is while I chop up my vegetables. And I'll interrupt to tell you what else I'm doing here and to correct.
I know, I'm like jumping in here. So
first of all, you have to core a tomato. And it's not just the stem end. You actually have to get in there because that dry bit of stem actually goes. So when it says to core a tomato, you have it, and then you take out that whole center bit.
Right. Okay. So we're gonna let him do that for a minute while I talk about conserves. So a conserve is kind of an old school preserve. It's not very much used today, but here's the deal: it's mostly low sugar. It's fruit. Tomatoes are a fruit after all, and sometimes vegetable. So it's some kind of fruit or vegetable mixture. It is lower sugar, so it's not a preserve or a jelly or a jam. And it usually includes some forms of aromatics. In this case, what are your aromatics?
I have onions, and I also have serrano chilies. Whole beautiful serrano chilies.
And because we're cutting down the sugar, we're going to actually add an apple, a tart green apple, which is going to kind of balance the flavors a little more. And then often in conserves, there are nuts, which is why I have walnuts. And toward the end of this cooking process, we're going to add walnuts to it and let it go even further. So Bruce is going to start, and then I'm going to tell you why this is kind of weird because there's no pectin in this recipe.
So I'm going to put the tomatoes that I've chopped into the pan.
Let me see about this. So the recipe calls for what, 1 pound, 2 ounces or something like that?
1 pound of beefsteak tomatoes.
But we actually got both beefsteak and we got Italian plum tomatoes from Melissa's Produce. So we're actually using a combination here. And what that's going to do is make a slightly thicker conserve than just the beefsteaks would make. But that's where we are right here.
Okay. I'm going to thinly slice my serranos and put those in. I am not seeding them. This is a spicy tomato conserve. We want those seeds.
Spicy. I want it really, really spicy, like a little mouth numbing, that kind of thing. So why would you make a conserve like this? To put on soft cheeses like brie and camembert in the summer, to serve with creme fraiche and crackers on the deck for a party, to put in baked potatoes with all kinds of sour cream and butter and all that great stuff, to put on
burgers are my favorite thing.
Anything off the grill would be great for this tomato conserve. You can even add a little to sour cream to make a dip for vegetables. So, okay,
that was the sugar, the apples, the chilies. This is some chopped onion, the cider vinegar. There's salt, there's mustard seed, there's allspice, and there's tomato juice.
Okay, why the tomato juice?
You need liquid, right? If you're doing anything like this, you need some liquid. Sometimes it could be water. Sometimes it could be vinegar. There's a little vinegar. We don't want too much. If this were going to be a chutney, I'd probably replace most of that tomato juice with more vinegar because I really want a thick chutney. But this, the tomato juice will cook down. It'll allow all these vegetables to cook and soften, and then it'll reduce and make this really thick and lovely.
And just to say one thing, this is tomato juice, not those vegetable blend juices, right? So
not
this
Bloody Mary mix.
Yeah, it's not Bloody Mary mix for sure. So this is just tomato juice. We want that really pure tomato flavor, and we want to preserve the freshness of those tomatoes that we can get, especially in the summertime, the fresh the way they taste. And again, we said we reduce the sugar a bit, and we've added all these aromatics. We really want to bring the tomatoes up over the top of all of that stuff. So Bruce is going to bring this to a simmer.
It is going to simmer.
It is. And then we're going to actually simmer this for 20 minutes once it gets moving. And what we're going to do, just to tell you what our process is we're going to simmer this for 20 minutes on the stove behind us. And then after 20 minutes, I'm going to add, and here it comes, the nuts. So I've got, how much?
So there's half a cup of walnuts. And Mark is chopping them up with those in this little bowl, and then we'll add these after.
If you can't tell, Bruce is the chef in our duo, and I'm the writer. So when I say, how many walnuts do I have? I'm asking him the same questions I ask when we write books together. So there you go.
Mark gets all of my notes and turns them into the book. So you can imagine 425 recipes. He got quite a folder for me. Most of it illegible. Mark is the only person who
multiple folders.
Read my handwriting.
Yeah.
So he's not chopping them too fine because you don't want them ground up. Those aren't thickening. Those are for texture and flavor. And we don't add them now because you don't want them to become mush. You want them to still have some texture at the end of cooking. So that's great. He's going to put them in a little bowl.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
So that we can take them off to the side.
Sure. Okay.
And the cutting board is available for the next recipe.
Chefs are just so bossy. They're just incredibly bossy people. Anyway, I'm getting this into the bowl. I hope that I'm doing it to your approval.
Oh, sure.
Okay, great. Using my fingers to get this into the bowl. It's kind of gross, but okay.
So when this is simmering on the back stove, I'll occasionally go to it and stir it, but we're going to work on a few other recipes from the book.
So I want to see this come to a boil.
I'm going to get a wooden spoon.
I want to talk to you about pectin and why there's no pectin in this. So a lot of the jams and the jellies and the preserves in the book use low sugar pectin. We especially went with granulated low sugar pectin because we wanted to pull the sugar content down on everything. You know how sometimes you eat like strawberry preserves and it just tastes like sugar and it doesn't taste like strawberries? So in order to make it taste like really great strawberries, we want to use low sugar pectin for many of the recipes, and before we can pull the sugar down. But this has no pectin in it, and there are a set of recipes in the book like this for preserving and creating jams, and in this case, condiments like conserves that don't use pectin. And here's why we skip the soluble polysaccharide that is pectin and just do this is because we're going to cook this for a really long time, and we're going to let the sugar that's in there, that 1 cup of sugar that Bruce added, we're going to let that do the mounding, caramelizing, the structural formation of the
Let's also say
conserve.
that apples have quite a bit of natural pectin, and we did put an apple. So we will get some of the benefit of the natural pectin in the apple. So this is
And we'll talk about how you know. There's a specific technique how you know when this is ready on the stove. Since we're not using pectin, if we're using pectin, it becomes much easier.
It's about timing.
Yeah, you stir it in, and you don't need as many visual cues. But with this, because we dump the pectin out of the recipe, because we want a much more caramelized, deeper flavor to this conserve, as conserves often are, we have to use quite a few more visual cues to know when it's done.
And a good visual cue right now, this is coming to a simmer. So I'm going to bring this to the stove and put it on a low flame, and we're going to set the timer there for 20 minutes, and then which way the nuts will go in, and we're going to move on to garlicky pickled cauliflower. All right, the tomato conserve is on the stove. It's on a simmer. The timer's set for 20 minutes, at which point we'll put the nuts in it. I'll keep stirring it occasionally. We'll show you how we know it's done, and we're going to go on to a pickle recipe from cold canning. And Mark is going to show you to make these amazing garlicky cauliflower pickles, but as all pickles, it needs a brine, a salt mixture, and that is equal parts of distilled white vinegar and water. And it also has
can I talk about distilled white vinegar?
1 second, I have to put in the sugar and the salt.
Okay, can I talk about distilled
white
vinegar?
And I'm going to bring it to a boil.
So for years, for your grandmothers, my grandmother, your mothers, if you can, they made pickles. They used distilled white vinegar, and all distilled white vinegar sold in North America was at 5% acidity.
It always said reduced to 5% acidity.
Sorry, there was a beeping and I heard it and it kind of freaked me out. So anyway, there's a 5% acidity in distilled white vinegar. But recently, manufacturers have tried to cut corners and save some money, and a lot of distilled white vinegar sold in North America is 4%, and 4% is not necessarily preservative for refrigerator pickles. So when you go to the supermarket, you can still find the 5% acidity distilled, plain old distilled white vinegar.
But you gotta look.
That's what you want. You look on the label and see what the percent acidity is.
So why did they make that change? Money. Because if they add more water to it, they save a little money.
Right.
But it doesn't make it good for recipes that have been tested and proven to work over the decades.
That's right. So, So what I've got, I'm going to scale here just to make sure that I'm right. But I've got this really beautiful orange cauliflower. You could use purple cauliflower. You can use the regular white
Here's
cauliflower.
A purple cauliflower. Look at that.
I mean, we thought about using that. We thought it was a little bit too wild for these pickles, but it would work. It would turn the brine a very distinct color. That's for sure. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting the stems out of these cauliflowers, and I want to get fairly small, not like this size pieces. I want to get smallish pieces. I don't want to get crumbs, cauliflower crumbs. Is that a technical word? I think so. Cauliflower crumbs. I want to just take the stems off and find myself with some florets.
You're looking for florets. Now, stems are delicious. I like stems.
Right.
But for this particular recipe, you want the meat of the bud, the flower part, not as much stem. So, look, if you have extra jars, they're bigger, you could do the stems. But in this case, Mark is doing cutting off, trying to get mostly the tops. And you don't want them too small. You want to be able to pick these up and turn these into snack food.
I mean, some of them can be small. You know, some of them can be this size, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Some of them can be really small because they're good for cocktails to stick into martinis.
Stick in, nice.
But bigger ones are better for just snacking.
This is boiling, so now I've turned it off. This has to cool for about 15 minutes, and I did a swap, so we do have another one. I'll get to it. We have another one for when we're ready. If you pour this super hot brine over the cauliflower in the jars, it's going to soften them. It's going to cook them, cook them. And the point of this is not to have cooked cauliflower or pickled cauliflower, but you need to heat up that salt and sugar to make the brine better and make it work better. And you want it to be, a little better than room temperature. So we don't just dissolve it in cold water. We bring it to a boil, then we let it cool. And so this is still nice and like bath temperature, which is going to be perfect. And this is the one I did before. So Mark is now going to divide his cauliflower between the jars. He's going to put half a pound in each jar.
Well, I'm going to see how much I can get in a jar.
Okay,
so
you
just
do that.
Give me a minute. And I wasn't very chefy about this. I didn't make perfect florets. I just kind of cut it up. And again, some of these can be really small because you can pick these out and drop it in a martini in a summer drink. Or you can leave bigger chunks for like snacking or with hot dogs or hamburgers or that kind of thing. Anytime you want pickles. I think these are really great chopped up in chicken salad. They're great chopped up in tuna salad. Okay, that's about, I'm getting near, right? I'm getting near.
You want a half a pound in each, so 8 ounces,
Yeah, I'm getting close.
But you can also he's going to put in garlic, he's going to put in chilies, he's going to put the spices.
So I just wanted to show you the measuring, and it's kind of important. Why don't you talk about these jars for a minute?
So the jars have been cleaned with hot water and soap. That's all you need for cold canning. You don't need to boil them. You don't need to sterilize them. You could run them through the dishwasher, which actually will sterilize them. But the point for cold canning is that they're meticulously clean without necessarily being sterilized, which is a real benefit. So you not only are skipping the hot water processing, you're skipping the boiling of the bottles beforehand, all of which saves you heat, it saves you from sweating, it saves you from all this work that you don't necessarily want to do in the summer when this produce is fabulous.
So my grandmother was an Oklahoma farm woman. Wait a minute. I want to put the seeds in. Just give me a minute.
Okay.
My grandmother was an Oklahoma farm woman, and she canned every summer. And I can still see her to this day standing in that kitchen of that unair-conditioned Oklahoma farmhouse with the sweat just pouring off of her. And as she canned ground beef and other things like that. But she also canned vegetables.
You cannot cold can ground beef.
No, you cannot. You will in fact die.
So these are red Fresno peppers. You could use red jalapenos. You could use red serranos. We're using Fresnos. Mark is dividing the chilies between the jars as well as the cauliflower. And then
I've got some mustard seeds.
Half goes into each, mustard seeds and some cumin seeds.
I've got some cumin seeds.
Yeah.
And then we're going to actually shake these up a little bit.
And then garlic, because of course, garlic, you know?
Right.
And the nice thing about you could do, after we pour the brine on, as Mark says, I'm going to put the lids on tight and I'm going to shake them to make sure the spices get really mixed in well.
But remember that, I think that's about it. I think this is all stems. Remember that cauliflower degrades. So again, we want this to be cooled about 15 minutes because we don't want to cook it.
Bath temperature.
Anyway.
It's lovely. It's bath temperature. So I am going to divide this brine. And okay, push it down. As long as I can get the vegetables down, look at that. They are down under there. That's perfect.
There's an old rule, and you can even at this point add a little more vinegar and water to cover them. You can't. We're not fermenting here, so we're just pickling. So it's not as crucial. But there's an old rule. My grandmother would have told you that if it's in the brine, if it's fine, if it's out of the brine, take it out. In other words,
it means chuck it.
Yeah, chuck it. In other words, things need to be in an anaerobic or no oxygen environment below the brine. But again, this is not fermenting. This is pickling. So this one that's a little shy of its brine, I would turn this several days in the refrigerator. By the way, these need to go in the fridge for about 3 days before they're ready to eat. Yep. So I would turn this several times in the refrigerator over the next couple days. It's not going to go bad in any way.
I'm going to take a little bit of this excess brine and add it just.
We just happen to have some excess. But again, you don't need to do that. You can turn it. But in about 3 days, it'll be right. And just as a side note, the longer this sits, the more sour it will get. So if you are not a fan of super sour things, then consider you're going to eat it in 3 to 5 days. If you're a fan of super sour things, let it sit for a week, 2 weeks. It'll get super sour at that point. And then they'll last, if we go by USDA guidelines, they'll last about a month in the fridge, a month post pickling. So 3 days and then about 4 weeks after that. That's USDA guidelines. I have to tell you, we've kept these in the fridge for longer, but that is not USDA.
Yeah.
And
you'll want to eat them in a day anyway.
North Carolina University of North Carolina protocols about canning, which is who we used mostly for this, is USDA and University of North Carolina. And so 4 weeks would be the out for this. But again, if it's sticking out of the brine, just turn it in the fridge every day or so. And as Bruce says, these jars were cleaned, but not boiled.
Nope.
So, and the lids were not boiled. They were cleaned.
Yep.
And that's what it's going to take to make those pickles. Okay, so we've now made our garlicky, there's a lot of garlic in there, garlicky, really spicy cauliflower pickles. And what are we moving on to?
Carrot marmalade.
Carrot marmalade. Where do you see this?
So everybody knows about orange marmalade and grapefruit marmalade and even lemon marmalade. But we're doing a lemon carrot marmalade.
This is kind of a crazy recipe because the carrots bring a kind of vegetal sweetness to a marmalade. It's still great for toast. That's what it's made for. But it's a little more unusual than the standard marmalade. Plenty of marmalades in the book. So what I'm going to do, and before I say what I'm going to do, this is going to involve
a candy thermometer.
The dreaded thermometer. And this is a little trickier because this requires us to cook sugar to a certain set. So I'm going to take these lemons, these beautiful ripe lemons, and I'm going to grate them on the large Hulda box grater, just trying to get the zest off. And once I do this, I'm going to hand the lemon to Bruce and let him handle it.
And he's barely putting any pressure on it because he's just trying to get the zest off of it and not get any of the white pith. Could you do this with a vegetable peeler? I suppose, but I like the shreds that you get with the box grater. And if you did it with a peeler, then you're going to have some knife skills to get beautiful juliennes. And once he's done with that, I'm going to cut the rest of the rind off and chop up the inside of those lemons. So while he's doing that, I'm also going to tell you what I'm going to have to do over here, which is water and sugar, of course, because every good preserve has water and sugar, and ginger. Fresh ginger. I have another grater.
Get this. Carrot ginger lemon marmalade.
When I grate ginger with a grater, I rarely take the skin off it, but I am in this case because this ginger is a little dry, and I want to make sure that this skin is not going to be a problem in there. So now I have my exposed ginger, and I'm just going to grate away. I want about a tablespoon, and that's all that took.
Okay, so you can see that this is not perfect. This is not, every bit of zest has not been taken off. And the reason I'm going to kind of stop at this point is because I'm using a box grater and I'm going to start getting down into the pith, and I don't want to. So it's not perfect, and that's perfectly right for what this recipe
is cutting the citrus as if I were making supremes. I'm cutting all the rest of the rind and pith off. You could do this with grapefruits. You could do this with oranges. And to make supremes, I would now cut through each segment. But in this case, I'm just going to chop the inside of this all up. So get one off. And because again, this is lemon marmalade, and we want to make sure that it is lemon. I'm going to get as many seeds out as I can. Seeds do a pectin, and that's a nice thing.
Yeah, but I don't want seeds in my marmalade.
But I don't want seeds in my marmalade. If you could find seedless lemons, then you should use seedless lemons.
And by the way, in terms of lemons, don't use Meyer lemons for this. You really want the sourness of the lemon. Meyer lemons are sweeter, as you probably know. Pink lemons too, they're a little sweeter. You really want that punch, that hard citrus punch of just standard lemons. These are beautiful ripe lemons, which are kind of crazy to get in the summer like this when we're recording this.
Citrus is a winter fruit in North America. So that is the time when most of us look forward to our citrus fruits, is when the peaches and the plums and the nectarines and even the apples are gone.
But if you look, you can get good citrus this time of year, and that's how we're doing these lemons that we got from Melissa's. They're really nicely firm and good. Okay, look, I have now...
He's got all that zest, and he's going to put that in the pan.
I have done what no chef would do, which is run my hand over the outside of a box grater. Can you tell that I'm the writer?
Excellent. And I'm still picking seeds out of these lemons.
There it goes. And all that zest, which is going to provide so much of that slightly bitter tang to the marmalade.
Because you have sourness from the meat, which I'm chopping up, but you want the bitterness from the rind.
Right, exactly.
Bitter is a quality of marmalade that you really want.
So while you're doing that, I'm going to start with this process. Now, we have carrots.
Those don't look like carrots.
No, they don't.
Our carrots were orange.
Well, they can be orange. They can be purple. They can be yellow. There's all kinds of beautiful carrots out there. And we actually chose yellow and purple carrots because we thought it would look really beautiful in the jars. The purple carrots are going to stain it a little purple as it cooks and it becomes marmalade, which will actually be a really wild look to it. So what we're going to do is going to grate these carrots. I'm grating them straight into the pot. I'll move to the board in a minute when Bruce needs the pot. But I'm just going to grate these down. And again, grating is way preferable to chopping for this, right?
It is. You don't want to chop. You want the shreds. You absolutely want the shreds of this. And so you want to grate it. You could use a food processor with a grating disc. That would work just fine as I pick out all the seeds. And you want to make sure you don't grate any of your finger in there. You want to keep this vegetarian.
Gross. Yes, we do. I'm getting carrot all over myself.
Okay, so I'm gonna.
How many times have we all said that?
I'm gonna get the timer, which means I'm going in the drawer here to get something I can scrape the lemons up with. And Mark is gonna go put the nuts, which are over here. He's gonna put those into the tomato conserve.
Remember that tomato conserve that went back to the stove? So it's been 20 minutes. So I'm gonna add my walnuts to it.
Okay. So I'm now gonna take over the grating, and if you really want to be careful, you can get yourself one of those cut-free gloves when you do this, so that you don't worry about cutting yourself or scraping your fingers over these little blades on the grater. Again, you can use a food processor. Will make it go much, 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 much faster.
So back to that tomato conserve. Let me just say, you really want to watch this. This is not a make it and walk away thing. So I've upped the flame a little bit to bring it back to a boil. You just want to watch it really carefully because the sugar in there can caramelize too fast and it can get too thick. You want good evaporation without any scorching that's going on. So that isn't a walk away dish to make. This one, I don't know, this is a little bit of a walk away. Once you do this,
a lot of work. This is a little prep for this.
It's a lot of prep.
But now imagine if we were making a case, right? Like you normally would do when you make marmalade. marmalade, make 12 jars. Imagine how long I'd be doing this. This is just for 2 pints.
Right.
Delicious,
My grandmother
delicious.
never canned carrots, and they grew carrots on the farm in the family garden. It was
Is
a
that
family
because carrots
plot.
lasted so long?
I'm not sure. She did store carrots. They had a root cellar. I mean, this is how old I am. My grandparents had a root cellar, and they had a root cellar, and she stored carrots down there. But I will say, she canned carrots and celery with ground beef when she. So there you are. We're not doing anything like that, nor are we canning any meat products. Hey, this is the Oklahoma farm life that my grandmother lived.
Let's can some tripe. Spleen. I'm going to can some spleen.
I never saw that. Okay, so I'm going to go back and check that conserve and see what it's bubbling
and I'm going to keep grating. Okay, so this is the end of the carrots. Yay. I'm going to put this in the sink.
Oh.
Look at those beautiful purple carrots.
Oh my gosh, look at that mound of carrots.
In they go. And we're going to turn this on. All right, you'll notice the pot has changed. Magic here. That copper pot was not working on my induction burner, even though it was stainless steel lined. So we switched to a stainless steel pot.
Funky. We've actually seen that pot work before, so we're not quite sure what happened there. But okay, so we just want to be honest, and the pot has changed. We just took everything in that pot and dumped it into this. So what Bruce is going to do is he's going to bring this up to a simmer.
Yep.
And he's going to attach a candy thermometer, or I guess you could use another form of thermometer, but candy's best.
A deep fry thermometer, as long as it goes low enough.
Right. And what we're going to do is get this. This is the key set. So we've left pectin out of this too. We have lots of recipes in the book in cold canning with all kinds of low sugar pectin in it. But in this case, we don't want to do that. We want to let the sugar do the job of the set. So in order to do that, we've got to get this to 220 degrees Fahrenheit or 104 degrees Celsius.
Yep.
So one or the other, and it will then set.
When you're making jams and jellies, your thermometer is going to jump right up. It's already at 204, 205. It's going to plateau at about 215.
It's plateaued at 209, actually.
And as it comes to a boil, it will continue to go up to 12, 214, 215. It's going to stop here for a bit. So we're going to let this come to 220, but it may take us a while. This has been going a few minutes, and this thermometer says it's at about 216. I have another thermometer. If you have multiple thermometers, sometimes it's a good idea to check because thermometers are calibrated differently. And I know most home cooks don't have multiples, but if you do, it can. Like this one's already, it jumps around from 215 to 218. This one says it's at 217. So we know we're getting close. And your experience tells me when I'm looking at it, I see bubbles coming up. Do those bubbles look like they're coming out of liquid? Do they look like they're coming up out of syrup? Because in the end, when it gets too close to 220, it's going to look syrupy. And we're almost there. It's almost at that point. In fact, I'm going to take this out because we are almost at 220. And I'm going to give this just another minute or so, stirring it because I don't want to scorch it. I mean, the last thing you want to do is burn it after all this work.
Just to say, as a writer, this is the problem with cookbooks is
in general.
You have to condense how the technique works in the recipe, and it's impossible to get every nuance into it. And of course, a trained chef knows to look, as he says, are the bubbles seeming to come up out of water, or are they thicker bubbles that are coming up out of syrup? And we're getting very close to that thickness.
And we say in the book, it takes about 15 minutes to get to the 220 and the proper temperature. So it's the proper texture, the proper consistency, the proper temperature.
Right.
And we are just about there. So in fact, I'm going to turn this off. This is still going to bubble away in a minute. And now I'm going to show you how I bottle stuff. So these jars also have been meticulously clean, washed with soap and water. So has my funnel, canning funnel. It fits right into the mouth of the jar. And this is a canning ladle with a sort
of... do you need all this fancy stuff?
No, but it makes it easier. Oh, look at the plop down there. This is syrupy and yummy. Look at the color. This purple.
It's crazy. We've been talking about this color. It's so crazy and beautiful, this color.
God, this is beautiful.
Now, you're going to see that this is going to make, we said...
I overfilled that jar.
You did. You overfilled it. We said it's going to make about 2 jars. There's an about function here because it has to do with the moisture in the carrots, the moisture in the lemon, how much liquid is in the lemon and not. That does vary by season. And
how much you overfill one jar.
It's set on the shelf.
I could have evened these out a lot better.
Well, why don't you even them out here? Why don't you even them out?
And I'm going to use an unwashed spoon. So now I know we have to eat these within 3 days because now I'm not using a super meticulously clean spoon to do this.
But the great thing about this is that you can make a couple jars or something, and even if you don't want to set this back in your fridge for 3 or 4 weeks or in the freezer indefinitely, once it's cooled to room temperature, the good thing is now you have a jar to bring to someone as a gift.
Oh,
You have
yeah.
an extra jar if you find carrots in the market on sale. If you find fruit on the sale in the market, you can make a couple jars of strawberry jam, one for yourself and one for a friend. That's carrot marmalade, carrot lemon marmalade. Now, we're going to actually check what's going on with that spicy tomato conserve on the stove because it's getting really close to being done. And I've dropped the flame and we've been stirring it more and more frequently. Again, this is kind of a dish you have to baby a little bit to get it right. And in the meantime, Bruce is going to set up the last recipe we're going to demo.
Which are pickled plums.
I know.
Yum.
Plums.
Yum. So we checked on the spicy tomato conserve. It's got a few more minutes. We're going to bring that over and show it to you. It really looks fabulous. Mark has these beautiful red plums, which he's poking with a skewer. And while he does that, and I'll tell you why he does that after I make the syrup. Basically, these are going to be pickled in a vinegar syrup. So here in this pot, I have red wine vinegar, and I am adding sugar to that. So it's basically a simple syrup with vinegar instead of water. And to that, I'm spicing it up. These are spiced pickled plums with ginger and cinnamon sticks and cloves and salt, because you have to have some salt. And I'm going to bring this to a simmer, get all of these spices dissolved, get this syrup warm. And Mark is telling you why are you poking the plums?
Okay, so let me just start and say, you want small, before I say why, you want small-ish plums, not giant plums. And you can't do this with Italian prune plums. They're too dry for this recipe. So if you grew up in the South, like I did, you know all about spiced pickled peaches and how it's served with ham for the holidays. You probably know about these things. And
Jewish
barbecue.
from New York. I didn't know from ham. So I met him. Now I love ham.
So I'm taking a bamboo skewer. You can use a toothpick. And what I'm doing is I'm taking these plums. I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to use about 10 of them. And I'm poking them. And this is to get this sugar, vinegar syrup, sweet sour syrup, more into the plums. This is actually going to take a little more time than those cauliflower pickles took to get right.
Yeah, these cauliflower pickles are almost right. In another day or so, they're going to be spectacular. The plums have to soak in here, for a week or so to really soak in?
What we're going to do is we're going to bring this to a simmer. Yeah. We're going to simmer it for 1 minute, this sugar vinegar brine with the spices in it.
Yeah, sweet and sour syrup.
Right. We're going to simmer that for about a minute just to kind of get the sugar going in it. And then we're going to put the plums in it, bring it back to a simmer. And then after that, we let the plums actually cool to room temperature in this syrup, having come back to a boil. So that's about 3 hours before they can go in a jar. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have 11. That's good enough for that. Okay. That gives me 2 plums to eat for lunch.
This is boiling. Let this boil for about 1 minute.
It smells really good. It smells like the sweet and sour bit.
It smells like Christmas.
It has a little smell like
cloves
Christmas.
And ginger
but,
and cinnamon.
Plums are seasonal. I mean, you can find them all year round, but now is when they're at their best, when we're recording this in the summer, at least where we live. And, to get plums like this that are soft and juicy, this is what you want for this, because this is really a kind of fabulously sweet, sour, decadent plum thing that goes on. And when you use all the plums out of it, you can strain this brine and boil it down a little more, and then it becomes like this syrup that you can use with cookies, that you can use to drizzle over pound cake. But that's down the road when the plums are out of it.
You can also have it as a drink. You can mix a little bit of this sour syrup and mix it with seltzer. Oh my goodness!
I was thinking vodka.
Oh,
okay, yeah, seltzer. Right. Seltzer's good.
Plums are going into the boiled syrup.
Okay, so be careful. Again, it's really hot, so don't just throw them.
No, do not just.
As I just threw one.
Stir them around. Yum, yum.
Yeah, so this has got to boil for 1 minute.
Back to 1 minute.
And the reason we do this is so that the plums can really get a set, and he's going to stir this a lot while you're doing this.
This way the plums are cooking a little bit, just enough to soften them a bit, give them a head start on the pickling process, allowing that hot syrup to get in those holes that Mark poked in them.
This is going to boil, as we say, for about a minute. And you want to kind of stir it a bit. And the reason you want to stir it is not because anything's going to happen. It's not going to scorch or anything like that. It's, as Bruce said, try to get as much of that liquid moving into those holes over time. And once you, in fact, cool this to room temperature, then what you're going to do is you're going to take these plums out of it, if you're going to do the whole fancy thing, you're going to put them in a rather large jar. So what size jar would we use?
For this, I'd be using for at least this quart jar, if not a half-gallon size jar.
2 of them and a half-gallon jar. And then you're going to actually strain this of its aromatics, but you're still going to add a few of those aromatics, some ginger, some of the cloves, from some of the cinnamon sticks, just to taste back into that jar over the long term.
Voila. This is now perfect. This is going to cool for 3 hours, and then they get put in the fridge to pickle and become spectacular.
And we're just about ready with that hot tomato conserve, that spicy tomato conserve.
Yeah, why don't you get it? Let's see what it looks like. We can finish it off right here if we need to. Set this off to the side. Okay, let's bring that here. Oh my God, it looks like ketchup. It's fabulous.
Do you see this? It's really thickened up quite a bit. So what we want to do is we want to thicken this up a little more.
And use a spatula to scrape all that tomato paste that's built up on the side. That'll help thicken it up.
Don't waste any of that tomato goodness.
No. Here's how we know it's done. I'm pulling the wooden spoon through it, and I can see the bottom of the pan.
Do you see how?
Well, I don't know if the camera can get down into the pan.
Well, when you pull it back, there's a momentary pause before it flows back into place. That's how you know that there is enough evaporation that the sugar is starting to form a set in it, and it will actually set up then in the fridge. I'm going to get you your jars.
Okay. This is going in one big jar with a little flip top.
Right here.
Yep. But I need my funnel because I am not risking spilling any of this anywhere.
I'm going to rinse your funnel.
Okay, so we don't have contamination of flavors. We like to call this flavor distance so that everything stays like what it's supposed to. There's the timer telling us that this actually should be done. And it is done. Perfect. Look at that. Now, I'm going to pour it. Oh, it's like right now it's like the texture of a salsa. It is going to thicken up more into a barbecue sauce ketchup, kind of jammy.
Let me give you a tip about that, about what's happening here. This is really hot, as you know. This is super hot at this point. And you could put it in the refrigerator, but why do you want to spend that much on your electric bills? Because this is going to heat your refrigerator up. So what you want to do is put this aside. You can put the lid on it at this point. We don't really care about canning lids and all that kind of stuff, about the seal on them in cold canning. So you can put this aside and then set this aside for 45 minutes, an hour at room temperature. And you'll see then that it will start to set up, and then put it in the fridge, and you won't waste electricity cooling it down so far in the fridge.
You can see our marmalade is actually starting to set up already. It's going to be spreadable and beautiful. Our pickles.
I'm going to show you some of the things we've made out of this book that are sitting in our house right now. So I'm going to get some things in the back pantry, and Bruce is going to get some things out of this fridge.
It is crazy the amount of stuff you can make and the variety of stuff you can make. The only kind of ketchup we eat is my homemade ketchup, homemade barbecue sauces, homemade pickles. Every morning, jams, the homemade jams that come out of this kitchen. I have been preserving and canning and making jams and jellies for years. I mean, you can see we live in this house now in New England, but we used to live in a small apartment in Manhattan. And I used to can in Manhattan, and I would buy all the fruit from those ubiquitous fruit guys on the corner. And I would just buy 2 pints of raspberries and make a jar of jam. So that was really how we transitioned into this book of small batch. It's what I've always done.
Okay, so I pull these out of the fridge in the back pantry. So this is a double batch of the bread and butter pickles from the book. These are, sweet sour pickles with mustard seeds and all that. And get this. Here is steeping raspberries in a sugar syrup in high-proof vodka, and I'm making homemade chambord. This will be ready in a week and a half. You can see it settling, which means I got to stir it every once in a while, and then we'll strain it and have homemade chambord. Look,
red currant jelly.
Homemade red currant jelly. Look at this. This, I believe, is homemade strawberry jam. Somebody's been in it already. This is black currant cassis jam right from the book. This is sour cherry jam.
This is kimchi. You can make your own kimchi in our book.
This is homemade refrigerator fermented kimchi.
Here is like a quadruple version of raspberry jam made without pectin, made with chia seeds, which thickens it up. So it's a high fiber jam. We've got homemade mustard.
We've got kiwi jam,
peach jam, strawberry jam,
Oh, there's a double strawberry in our life.
Yum.
Someone's been into this one and into this one at the same time. You can see that this is actually how we have always cooked. We have always done this, and that we got to write a book and use this great produce to make all these condiments is just spectacular. And by the way, you can see that we label our jars so that we know what's in the fridge. But
the date we make it.
Kimchi on a rare burger with mayonnaise. That is pure.
And kimchi is it's bubbling. You open it and it bubbles up. How nice is that? It ferments in the refrigerator. Oh, I could smell that sourness. Oh gosh, I think I've got a burger tonight.
So it's really crazy. All you can make, from kiwi jam to Chambord to the stuff we made today. I mean, it's really insane what you can do with cold canning in small batches with no canner present.
And no hot water processing, no steam, no boiling.
Okay, so who are you?
I'm Bruce Weinstein.
And I'm Mark Scarborough.
And we were delighted to show you some recipes from our new book, Cold Canning.